Good morning. This is Anna Patterson with the North Carolina Housing Coalition. Thank you for joining us this morning for our housing call. And without further ado, I will turn it over to our Director of Housing Policy, Stephanie Watkins-Cruz.
Good morning, everyone. I hope you all are having a great week so far. We're going to go ahead and kick it off with organizational updates. We have some AmeriCorps Vista opportunities for in housing counseling communications. So a few of our housing counseling agencies, Kingdom CDC in Spring Lake, North Carolina, and Prosperity Unlimited in Kannapolis, North Carolina, are each looking for a communications vista to join them for a year of learning and capacity building services. Just a reminder, housing counseling is a vital part of the housing ecosystem. They provide critical guidance for home buyers, and they help increase the financial health of their communities. So this is a great opportunity to learn about the housing landscape, to strengthen communication skills, and help contribute to the mission of reducing poverty in North Carolina. We'll have the link to learn more and apply in our call notes for you. We are going to still be covering updates for Hurricane Helene. Remember, we still have our database available with resources that are supporting recovery. If you have been checking on the resource database and you recognize that there's something that needs to be updated, you can submit that update via form to us or email us. There will also be a virtual hall conversation hosted by the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services on Hurricane Helene recovery and the services throughout Western North Carolina on October 30th, so tomorrow, from 12 to 1:30 p.m., and housing is expected to be one of the topics that is discussed. The event is going to be held virtually on Zoom, or you can dial in from your phone, and we'll have the link to join by Zoom and the phone number in the call notes as well. There will be Spanish and sign language interpretation and communication translation as well. In terms of state updates, last week, Governor Roy Cooper, in collaboration with the Office of State Budget and Management, OSBM, released a report containing a preliminary assessment of the damage that was caused by Hurricane Helene, as well as the level of need for federal and state resources. OSBM suggested that the overall impact of the damage from Hurricane Helene is likely to exceed $53 billion. The overall damage to housing is estimated to be about $14.7 billion, according to the report. The State Budget Director, Kristen Walker, stated that about 92% of the 126,000 homes in Western North Carolina that were damaged by Helene did not have flood insurance. And it's clear that the widespread housing needs are not going to be fully met or covered by private insurance, FEMA individual assistance, or the Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery Fund. On Thursday, a day after the report was released, the General Assembly passed the second round of disaster recovery aid, and Governor Cooper signed it into law on Friday. Unfortunately, we were really disappointed to see that housing was not mentioned much. There was $1 million of the $604 million that were allocated in the bill that would be sent to county departments of social services to provide rental assistance to households at or below 200% of the federal poverty level, who have suffered hardships due to the impacts of Hurricane Helene and are facing imminent risk of eviction. So these eligible households can receive a one-time payment up to the HUD local area fair market rent measure for a two-bedroom unit. We're disappointed because we know the need is much greater than this. And again, we know that a majority of the homes that were impacted, we're having to really consider not only the short-term impacts, but the mid and long-term impacts. As we begin to shift into recovery mode and the focus looks to temporary and short-term housing for survivors whose homes are uninhabitable, FEMA is offering competitive compensation to private landlords who agree to house displaced families. Some owners that are grandfathered under certain restrictions in some communities, like Brevard and Asheville, have been hesitant to rent directly to FEMA because they will lose their non-conforming use status during the time they're renting to FEMA. So city officials are considering right now how to address this. But we also feel like it's important to mention that during this time to keep in mind tenants' rights and how they need to remain a priority. FEMA is going to have higher rents, and that's likely to have negative impacts such as displacement and the eviction of long-term tenants in exchange for higher rents. We know this was an issue in Hawaii after the Maui wildfires, and we expect it to be an issue in Western North Carolina as well. So just some key things to keep an eye out on. Moving on to federal updates, we are 1 week away from Election Day. Early voting locations will be open through 3 p.m. on Saturday. We know of a few housing bonds on the ballot throughout the state. There'd be Chapel Hill. The town of Chapel Hill has a $15 million bond. Cary, town of Cary has a $30 million bond, and Charlotte has a $100 million bond, and Asheville has a $20 million bond. So we'll be keeping an eye on those and how the results from voting goes. In late September, around the same time that Hurricane Helene hit, Congress passed a continuing resolution to keep the government funded through December 20th while they work out a FY 2025 budget, which started on October 1st. Congress is going to return from recess on November 12th, and will have little over a month to reach an agreement on a budget or pass another continuing resolution that would push any decisions into the next Congress. They are also expected to pass an emergency relief package for Helene and Milton, but we're still not sure about specifics because they remain unclear. Last week, the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development announced a partnership with the North Carolina Central University School's Law of Social Justice and Racial Equity Institute. Through this partnership, the law students at North Carolina Central will join fair housing practitioners and attorneys from across the nation to participate in fair housing litigation courses offered through HUD's National Fair Housing Training Academy. And beginning this spring, North Carolina Central will also offer a fair housing litigation course taught by North Carolina Central and the National Fair Housing Training Academy faculty. The partnership aims to expand students' exposure to the real-world enforcement of fair housing cases and will provide student internship and career opportunities within HUD-funded fair housing partner agencies in order to grow and sustain fair housing efforts. Earlier this month, Fannie Mae announced the expansion of the Expanded Housing Choice Initiative, which aims to provide new loans to multifamily developers who accept Section 8 Housing Choice vouchers in communities without source of income protection. This program was first launched in April 2022 as a pilot in eligible communities in Texas and North Carolina. The program will now be available to borrowers in all jurisdictions nationwide that do not have source of income protections. At least 40% of the units developed by the borrower must be affordable at or below fair market rent. Moving to events, we want to just lift up that there will be a webinar today at 12 p.m. titled Housing and Homelessness in the Wake of Natural Disasters, hosted by our partners at the National Low-Income Housing Coalition, the National Homelessness Law Center, and the Southern Economic Advancement Project. And the the National Low-Income Housing Coalition, will also be leading several conversations around disaster housing recovery. And we'll have dates and links to participating in those events in the call notes as well. Thank you all so much for joining us today. We have several other resources that you can read, then you can check out. Again, if you are aware of updated information that needs to be added to our resource database, you have questions about Hurricane Helene, please don't hesitate to reach out to us and to check out the link in our call notes so we can make sure that collaborative database remains helpful and accurate. I hope you all have a great rest of your week, and we'll talk to you next time.